Well, thank you again for being with us. And of course, this morning we're talking about the difference between just existing, just being, existing, and being alive, feeling alive, aliveness, vitality, enthusiasm, joy. Desmond Morris wrote a book many years ago. He was a zoologist, and Morris wrote a book called The Naked Ape. And he started out, as I recall, I think I read it in high school, so it was a very long time ago. it was it was chiseled into stone. He started out by saying, suppose there's intelligent life out there in the universe, and one day they come on their spaceship and they come and they observe, and just like all of the sci-fi movies that we grew up with in the 50s and the 60s, they're looking through their telescopes or their screens, and they're observing life on Earth, and they're trying to understand, what life on Earth is. How would they classify human beings? So zoologists look at life, and the first thing we have to recognize is that there are certain characteristics of the things that are alive. There's certain things that scientists look for. So things that are alive, they breathe, kind of they inhale and exhale somehow they do that, whether it be through lungs or it be through gills or be through membranes, and whether they breathe the oxygen in the air or whether they breathe sulfur dioxide from the volcanic vents deep down in the ocean. There's respiration, and then food has to come in and food has to go out. There's assimilation and excretion. Life is responsive to its environment. So there's certain things that scientists look at to determine whether something is alive or it's not alive, And then within that, they start to classify things kind of based on the way they're structured, and do they have bones, all of these different things. Some are plants and some are animals, and surely the aliens looking down would see that there's some of these creatures live in the ocean and swim in the ocean. Some of them seem to live in the air and fly through the air, and others live in the jungles. And then there's these things that we know as human, but they wouldn't know. How would they know? And they're trying to figure it out. And what Desmond Morris suggested in his book is that somebody who didn't know, somebody from the outside looking in, looking down upon us, would just say that human beings are naked apes. They're apes without the fur. And if you think about it, biologically they say that we share 98% of our genes with chimpanzees. So from a physical standpoint, we are not too far removed from our cousins in the animal kingdom. But there's a difference. There's a significant difference that we have to try to account for. If we share 98% of our genes, 98% of our physical being, if we share that with our cousins in the jungle, then what is it that makes us uniquely human? What is it that kind of separates us? Why aren't we living still in the jungles? Why aren't we still just climbing trees and eating our fruit, And what is it? What is it that makes us human? What is it that would make this naked ape so distinctly different? And defining this it, what is it that makes us different, is kind of a quest of life, the quest of who am I, why am I here, where am I going? Back in the golden days of Hollywood, when the big screen studio productions, and I'm talking black and white days, and of course when I think about that, I think of the movie The Razor's Edge with Gene Tierney and Tyrone Power. We used to show that periodically at the center. the movie producers, the people who ran Hollywood, they were trying to define what is it that makes one actor have star quality and another actor, just an actor. What is it? And they came up with this idea. It was called the it factor, IT, the it factor. Can't describe it, can't define it, can't necessarily create a formula to duplicate it, but it is there, and it is what makes the difference between a star and just an actor, and in those days, the star would come into the scene, whatever the scene would be, and it might be, some kind of a gathering, or restaurant, or a party, or something, and the star would come into the scene, usually up a few steps up, and have to come down into the gathering, and then they would pause. They would pause at the top of the stairs, and they would be looking all around the room like they were looking for someone, and of course the camera was just absorbing their face, catching the studio lights as they were glinting off of the star's eyes, and you had this, if you think about it in real time, you'd say, what is this person doing there? Why are we looking at their face so long? But the producers and the directors were just letting us absorb it. There was something different about this person. So there's something different. There's something different between the 98% of us that is the same as the animals who live in the forest and human beings. And what is it? What is this it factor? And I'd like to suggest this morning that it is the difference between existing and being alive, between existence and aliveness. Animals come into the world and they are pretty much pre-programmed through instinct to know whatever it is that they need to know to exist, to survive, to live their lives, as they were intended to, as they were programmed to. So you see the images, if you watch the Saturday morning television, a lot of it's designed for cartoons, for children, and a lot of it has to do with wildlife. The zoo people go around the country and visit the different places, and they always have the baby animals, and these animals are born, and it's amazing. For example, a little horse is born, and it can stand up almost immediately. It can stand up and it can run almost immediately. And of course, it knows how to suckle. It knows how to go get its nutrition. And if you left that horse alone, if somehow, when it was old enough to be weaned, if you separated it from the herd, it would know to go eat grass. If a storm was coming, it would know how to seek shelter. When the hurricane was coming at the coast here a few months ago, and they do this every year when the hurricanes come to the coast, everybody was saying, well, what's going to happen to the wild horses that live on the Outer Banks? Who's going to go round those horses up? Who's going to protect those horses? And of course, the Park Service said the horses have been there longer than we have, and they know what to do. There's something within the horse that knows how to find adequate shelter. And of course, after the hurricane came and after the hurricane went, they came back on and said all the horses are accounted for. They're all okay. We human beings are still dealing with the aftermath of the storms. We're still carrying damaged parts of the houses out to the street. They had a story on the news last night of a group of volunteers from Charlotte who went down to New Bern and are helping people still, try to clean up. And this is months ago. The animal knew exactly what to do. There's something in it that knows how to exist. Everything it needs to know to live and to die, it knows. It knows how to do. It knows what to do. doesn't have to think about it, and it doesn't have to worry about it. It doesn't have to stress out about it. You know, we never kind of get the image that the that the animals are sitting in the forest and they're wondering where their next meal is going to come from. There's something within them that just knows how to go find it. You know? and I think of that in contrast. Lori and I, we got married in the early 70s, and we used to read Organic Gardening and Mother Earth News and all of these kind of back to nature publications. And there was a gentleman who had a column in there. Yule Gibbons was his name, and the column was called "Stalking the Wild Asparagus." Some of you may remember it. And he would write this article, and he was talking about how in the inner cities, when he would go into the inner cities, there were people who were going hungry, and yet there was food growing in the vacant lots, where the buildings had fallen down, things were in disrepair. And naturally, there was food growing there. But the people didn't know how to find it. They didn't know how to identify it. You know, we've lost that ability. The Native Americans, when the Europeans first came here, you know, they understood these things, how to go out into the forest and how to find, you know, the wild turnips and how to live with the land. And we've lost that, see. We don't have the instinct that tells us how to do that. We are not like the animal part of creation. So the animals have everything they need to be born, to live without worry, you know, to live without boredom, without depression, to live. But they are really just existing. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Their existence is a beautiful existence. But they will never be any more than what they were programmed to be. They can't be. It's in their genes. So something happened in the evolution of life on this planet. Something happened, the it factor, in which we as human beings came forward. Life evolved itself through the single-celled animals, through the multi-celled animals, through the fishes in the ocean, the creatures that crawled out of the ocean, the plants, the mammals, the apes. And then something happened. It happened. And it makes us different. And we have to consider, what is it? What is it that makes us different? So the animal kingdom runs on instinct. It is programmed. It is not necessarily very adaptable. So when the environment changes, and it changes in a manner that's detrimental to a particular species, it disappears. It can't change quick enough. Human beings, on the other hand, we are not in touch with a great deal of that instinct if it is still here. But what we have instead is intellect, logic, and reason. And we can think, and we can plan, and we can invent, you know, and we can build. The activity of thought, the activity of mind in human beings to a greater degree than in the animal kingdom. I think it was in the same book. I think it was in The Naked Ape, but if not, it was someplace else that I read or saw. And it was talking about human babies are born, compared to the animals, we are born incomplete. So that little foal is born, and in a few minutes it jumps up on its feet and it runs around its mother, and it goes and it looks for its milk. A human child, by comparison, can only lay there and cry. It needs someone to take care of it. And the reason that the author gave for that, why is it then that human beings are born incomplete, haven't finished developing, is what I mean by that. And it's because the human being is adaptable. This gives the human being the ability to learn about the environment as it exists at that time. So the parents and the grandparents can teach the child the way that things are at that moment and how to behave in that moment and what ought to be in that moment. So if the environment changes from the course of one generation to the next, the babies who are being born in the next generation learn how to cope with those things. And so it gives the human being a great amount of adaptability. We can think, we can reason, we can plan, we can build ships that will go with the wind. We can build ships that will fly through the air. We can build cities, we can build automobiles and trains, and we can do all of these things. When we lived in Wilmington, I used to love to go down to the river at the Carolina Beach State Park and just watch the ships go up and down the river, the container ships. When I worked in New York City, the building that we worked in was in downtown Manhattan, and it looked right out over the river. And when we get a break, I would go to the window and look down and just look at all of the marine traffic, all of the boats going up and down. So the human being has sacrificed in terms of instinct, but we more than made up for it in terms of intellect, what we can do with thought. But that still doesn't make us alive. The aliveness that I'm talking about, the vitality, the enthusiasm, the excitement of simply being alive, of feeling our unity, our oneness, our connectedness with all things. To be alive. The presence of a Buddha, the presence of a Christ. There's something they would say when Gandhi would sit in front of 1 million people in India. There was a feeling, a spiritual feeling that would come over the crowd. And some authors who were there recording it said they could feel it. It was palpable. There was an aliveness that was there. There was an energy that was there. There was something that was there that went beyond description, beyond understanding. To be alive. So what has happened to us then is that we have traded off our instinct for our intellect. And we have to learn. As far as existing goes, the animals are a lot brighter than we are. We're not so smart when it comes to knowing how to just find food when we need food or find shelter when we need shelter. But what we have tended to do is we have simply learned how to do the things that the animals do naturally. We just have learned how to do them more efficiently, more effectively. We have to learn how to go to work. We have to learn how to make a living. We have to learn how to drive a car. We have to learn how to get along with one another, our social skills. We have to learn how to fit into the different roles that we accept in life, whether it be as a child, as a student, as a parent, as a teacher, as an employee, as a spouse. All of these different things we have to learn, It's just absolutely amazing to me. You can take any subject in life and go on the internet, go to Amazon and look at the books. And there's got to be a bazillion books that are written on anything. How to be a parent, for example, how to be a spouse. There's books on that. So we get caught up in existing, but existing through the prowess of our intellect rather than through the natural ability of our instinct. And this is necessary. We really have to understand that this is necessary because the animal, the ape, that shares our genes is not free. It is not free. It is pre-programmed to be what it is, and it can never be more than what it is. But you and I can be free. We can be free. What this it is, what this it does for us, this it being the difference, it allows us to be free. We can be, like the Army's saying, be all that you can be. We can be something different. We can be something new. We can experience life in a new and unique way. But if we are to do that, two things, if we are to do that, first of all, we have to have the possibility of, in biblical terms, of good and of evil. We have to have the possibility of something really, really, really good or something really, really, really bad. And we have to have the full range of choice. The full range of experience must be possible for us if we are to truly experience our freedom. So we can be extremely excited about life. We can be extremely happy about life. We can be like kids going into a candy store every day when we get up about life, or we can be sad about life, or we can be depressed about life. We can become bored about life. And what's the difference? And the difference is you. You. You and I, we have to come to grips with our responsibility. Right? Responsibility is the ability to respond. You must be able to respond if you're going to be responsible. So life has left us alone to make this discovery, but we must make the discovery, and we must choose. We must choose whether we wish to simply exist or whether we wish to be alive, to be vital, to be vibrant. So you understand the difference, I believe. You've all seen it if you haven't experienced it. I think it was either Thoreau or Emerson, maybe it was Emerson, who said that most people are living quiet lives of desperation. Quiet lives of desperation. Get up in the morning, go to work, do your job, come home, have some supper, turn on the TV, go to bed, and repeat, and repeat, and repeat. And is that living, or is that existence? Now, I'm not saying that when we feel alive, when we are enthusiastic, when we are vibrant, when we are vital, that we don't do those same things, but there is something different in us when we do them. There is something exciting in us when we do them. There is something enthusiastic within us when we do them. There's a feeling of oneness. There's a feeling of contribution. There's a feeling of joy. And that is the difference between existing and being alive. So if we wish to think about this just a little bit more, we're going to talk about, well, how do we do that? If that's what you want to do, assuming that you've gotten to the point where you say, well, yeah, of course, I want to be alive. I don't want to just exist. I want to be alive. I want to feel. I want to be in love. I want to be in joy. I want to be enthusiastic. I want to celebrate the flowers. I want to celebrate the clouds in the sky. I want to celebrate each and every person I meet. As we were talking about gratitude last week, I want to bless everyone and everything I see, because everyone and everything I see is a unique and wonderful creation of the divine. I want to feel that. I want to be one with that. I want to participate in that. So in different mystical teachings, and we're going to talk a little bit about the mystical and intuition. In the mystical teachings of Judaism, they talk about the four kingdoms. And they talk about them as being the animal, the mineral, the vegetable, the animal and the speaker. And it doesn't say human, it says speaker. And the difference, as I understand it, is that we can be human and we have not discovered it. In other words, we can be human and simply existing. And when we are human and we are simply existing, we are fulfilling our role in the animal kingdom. But when we begin to become the speaker, when we begin to choose deliberately, when we begin to look at every day and ask ourselves, how does divine love want to express through me and as me today? How does God want to play as me today? What is the beauty and the joy that I can allow myself to experience today? See, then we become the speaker. Then we become a deliberate chooser. So Dr. Holmes tells us that the greatest discovery that mankind has ever made is this thing called mind. Now, mind with a capital M is God. Right? Anytime you're reading the Science of Mind textbook and you see a word starts with a capital letter like that, it's meaning it's a synonym for God. Principle, or love, or mind, things like that, they'll be capitalized because that means an aspect of God. And then there is the mind with little m, which is kind of our intellectual capacity, our ability to think. But we can become aware of the fact that we're thinking. We can become aware of the fact that there are these things called thoughts. And we can become aware of the fact that we can choose what to think. Now this is a tough one for a lot of people. A lot of people still don't accept the fact that they can choose what they wish to think. They have no choice. They'll tell you, I have no choice. I had no choice but to get angry. I had no choice but to get angry when that person called me a name. I had no choice but to get angry when that driver cut in my lane. I had no choice but to do what I did. And what they're saying when they're saying that is, I don't have the ability to control my thinking. I don't have the ability to choose what I think. I'm a victim. I'm a victim of my thoughts. I'm a victim of my circumstances. I don't have the ability to choose. And we do have the ability to choose. There are writers and teachers who have demonstrated that ability under the most adverse circumstances. We were talking in the Zoom group a couple of weeks ago. The Dalai Lama was relating a story about when the Chinese came into Tibet and the monks, the nuns, were taken prisoner. And one monk was held prisoner for many, many years, and he was released, and the Dalai Lama got to meet him. And he said to the monk, he said, "Were you ever afraid?" And the monk said, "Yes, I was." And the Dalai Lama said, "Well, what were you afraid of?" And the monk says, "I was afraid that I would start to hate my captors." And so here's a man in very, very tough situation who realized that he had the ability to control his thought and wanted to keep from hating his captors. We have the ability to choose, but we don't often exercise it. We exist. We go through our day in routine instead of in choice. So we can become aware of the fact that we can think and that there's this something called thought, you know. We use the word and I don't think that we can define it. It's an experience that we have, but I don't know that we can clearly say what thinking is or what thought is, but we can become aware of it. And then Dr. Holmes tells us something even greater happens. We become aware of the fact that something interacts with our thoughts, some sort of a power. He calls it the law of mind. You know. Something happens when we think. He says it's as if our thoughts go somewhere and then come back to us, pressed down, shaken together, multiplied in biblical terms. But there's a causative effect. You know. In the Old Testament, it says, as you think and believe in your heart, so are you. In Buddhism, it says everything you experience is a result of what you have thought. And in the New Testament, it says, as you think and believe in your heart. It says, pray believing in your heart, and it shall be done. So we can become aware then of the fact that not only is this phenomenon called thought occurring, but we can control that phenomenon. We can decide what we wish to think and what we don't wish to think with practice. And then we can become aware of the fact that thoughts have a causative effect in our lives. We become the speaker. For lack of a better way of describing it, when we speak through our belief, when we speak our words of joy, joy returns to us. When we speak our words of peace, we become peaceful. Gandhi says, be the change that you wish to see in the world. So we stop right there for a moment, and we have to kind of separate things a little bit. We have to kind of step away a little bit. So we have the world as the world is, and we have our life, our expression of life. Now, it is in that world, but it is not of that world. And it doesn't have to have the same existence or experience as the rest of race consciousness is having. So we have to consider then that everything that we see in the world, everything as it is today in this world, in this society that human beings have created with their thoughts and with their actions, in the countries that we have created by drawing imaginary lines on a map, through commerce and through wars and through all of the different things that we do, the world as we see it today is the outpicturing of human consciousness. It is the way it is because the sum total of human consciousness believes that that's the way it ought to be. Now, it's not quite that cut and dried. You know, we would never go out and say, well, gee, you know, we believe that children should starve to death. Nope. Some people would, probably. Some cruel people, but we wouldn't say that. But nevertheless, we have to understand that poverty is a condition that doesn't need to exist. Louise Hay tells us people don't go to bed hungry because there's a lack of food in the world. They go to bed hungry because there's a lack of love in the world. What is it about human beings and human nature that would tolerate such a condition? What is it about human consciousness that accepts the fact that that can happen and allows it to continue to happen? So that's what I'm saying. It is the outpicturing of human consciousness. If human consciousness was different, that condition would be different. If human consciousness was peaceful, wars would cease to exist. If we truly understand if we truly understand oneness, if we truly understand unity, if we truly understand what Dr. Holmes says when he says, I'm not my brother's keeper, I am my brother, you see this world would be a much different place. But it's not there yet. It's still trying to figure out the it. It's still trying to figure out what is it that makes human beings different than the animals in the forest. Race consciousness is using the intellect to exist. And what we are saying is we want to use it to be alive, to be alive. So when we turn on the news, when we read the newspaper, when we go to the movies, when we talk to people at the coffee cup, at the coffee break at work or at the water cooler, when we do all those things, what we are hearing played back to us is race consciousness. What we are hearing played back to us is human consciousness that is stuck in existence, in trying to exist, in trying to get more stuff, in trying to get power and control. Okay? All of our dramas on TV, you know, somebody is in danger of dying, you know, somebody is trying to dominate somebody else and win. And it is time for us to step out of that, you and I. It is time for us to find it, our spiritual nature, and to become the conscious co-creators of life. Dr. Holmes tells us that our life is our laboratory, our mind is our laboratory. We are spiritual adventurers in the unexplored territory of mind. But in order to do that, you must discover you. You must discover your ability to think, your ability to choose, your ability to make the difference in your world. Now, this is not a selfish thing. This is an altruistic thing. Because as we learn how to separate ourselves from the race consciousness, as we learn to explore more of the spiritual nature of our being, not the 98% that we have in common with the chimpanzees, not the intellect that we have in common with race consciousness that is stuck in existence. But when we truly start to step into the spiritual nature of life, we help not only ourselves, but we help everyone who is seeking, everyone who is reaching out. I was listening to a talk Joel Goldsmith did, I believe in the 60s, maybe the late 50s. And he was telling his class at that time that he doubted that at that moment in time that there were 1,000 people on the planet who actually experienced the presence of God, who actually experienced their own divine nature. He said there were a lot of people talking about it, a lot of people striving towards that. But if you looked at the number of people who actually had stayed with their progress, right, who had committed themselves to their growth, who had done their practice, who had stayed with their progress, he said he estimated about 1,000. Now, how he came up with that number, I don't know. I think he was trying to illustrate to his class that, you know, in biblical terms, many are called, but few are chosen. Few respond, rather than be chosen. But if we look at the individuals through history, if we look at the Buddhas, if we look at the Christ, if we look at the great spiritual teachers, if we look at the people who have done so, they are the peacemakers. They are the ones who have pointed to a better way, to a different way. So what we want to consider then is, you and I, we are exploring our spiritual nature, and we are learning more and more about what it is through our spiritual practice. We don't get so caught up when things don't go entirely the way we want it, right? Because we know we have to have the possibility of a range of experiences. But we know that by exploring our spiritual nature, by finding what is so different about human beings, is that we can become aware of our thought. That's as much as we know right now. We can become aware of our thought, and we don't know whether any other creature in the animal kingdom can do that. So we need to focus on that one thing that we can do, that we know or we believe that no other creature can do, and explore what is this thing called thought, and what is this thing called mind, and is Dr. Holmes right? Is there some type of a power that he called the law of mind? Is there something in this universe that responds to us according to the way we believe, that produces a change within us, that produces a change in our circumstances? If we wish to experience peace, then we stop looking for peace outside of ourselves. We stop looking for peaceful conditions. We stop looking for the neighbors to turn off their weed whackers so we can be at peace. And we recognize that peace already is at the very center of our being, and we have to go within to find it. And we have to dedicate ourselves to the practice to find it. Our meditation, experiencing the stillness, experiencing the oneness. If we wish to step into the day-to-day world and live our lives in the day-to-day world like the spiritual beings that we believe we are, then we have to stop existing, and we have to start living. And we have to get up in the morning, and we have to choose the kind of day that we wish to have that day. And we have to accept the responsibility that it doesn't depend on how somebody else treats us. How will I find the joy within me today so that I can express it? You know, sometimes we go into a situation and it's not working. You know, a lot of negative energy there. You know, things are not going my way, and we say to ourselves, "Well, why? Why am I in this situation where everybody is so upset?" You know, fear is contagious, right? I think you understand what I'm talking about. You go into a conference room, and everybody in that conference room is agitated, and you can feel the agitation. And if you don't do something to insulate and isolate your consciousness from that agitation, pretty soon you're part of it. Pretty soon you're part of that agitation. And on the other hand, somebody who can come in the room and be peaceful and be calm and be poised in the midst of the chaos can change that whole dynamic simply by being the peace and the poise. So sometimes we go into a situation and we start to get caught up in all of the chaos, and we think, well, my God, why is this happening to me? Why am I here? You know, I got up this morning and I decided that I wanted to have such a joyful and peaceful day, and here I am in the midst of this nonsense. And perhaps it's time to consider that we are there to be the one who brings the peace into the room. We are not depending on everybody else to be peaceful so we can be peaceful. We are depending on finding that peace within ourselves and letting that peace flow through us, to be the lamp that is no longer under the bushel basket. So as we do that, see, what's happening to us is we as human beings have moved away from the instinct of the animal kingdom. We have moved through the intellect of the human being expressing itself as existence, and now we are moving into the intuition of aliveness. Because once we start to do our spiritual practice, once we start to do our spiritual growth, and I'm talking about you get up in the morning and you spend some time deciding what kind of day you're going to have, and you do your spiritual mind treatment to set that intention into the law. You do your meditation to be still and to know. You try then to go into the day with mindfulness. You try to go into the day to keep yourself aware at every second of every moment of every day that you are in the midst of the very presence of God. See, your life is your laboratory. Your mind is your laboratory. The only thing that you can change, and the animals can't change because they're pre-programmed, but you can change your thinking. You can change your life. But you, Y-O-U, capital Y-O-U, you are the difference. You must make the decision. You must decide that existence is not what you're here for, but aliveness is what you're here for. And as you do that, you step into the realm of spiritual intuition. You step into the realm of a knowing that comes without a process. You step into the realm. Dr. Holmes tells us that there comes a point in time where we just want to be at home with the beloved, and whatever we need to know is known. The animals know what they need to know by instinct. The human knows what it needs to know by intellect. But the spiritual you knows what it needs to know through intuition. So what I'm inviting us to consider today, and I'm sure we're going to have to consider this through the week. There's a lot here. It's pretty deep. But what is it that makes you different than the animals in the forest? What is it that makes you different than humanity leading lives of quiet depression, just trying to exist? What is it that allows you to experience the excitement about life? What is the gift that I have to give today? What is it that I am here to express today? What is it that I am here to invite divine love to enjoy as me and through me today? How can I be loved today? How can I just be loved today? How can I help someone feel loved and appreciated? And I can't do that if I can't love myself. See? How can I bring peace into the world today if I haven't found it within myself? So our spiritual practice then is taking us out of race consciousness. It is insulating, isolating, and inoculating ourselves, in Dr. Holmes' terms, from race consciousness, and it is bringing us into living our lives as the spiritual beings that we truly are. Right? Thomas Stroher talks about the fifth kingdom. Right? The Jewish mystics talk about the speaker, the animal, the vegetable, the mineral, the vegetable, the animal, and the speaker. Stroher talks about the mineral, the vegetable, the animal, the human, and then the spiritual being. We are in the fifth kingdom. We are starting our journey of spiritual evolution. We are starting to step out of race consciousness. We are starting to identify the difference between existing and being alive by discovering and practicing our spiritual nature. Every day, every moment of every day is an opportunity for us to do that if we can simply remind ourselves to choose. To choose. Set your timer on your Fitbits or your phone. Set your timer to remind you every 15 minutes. Ask yourself, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I choosing? And am I acting as the spiritual being that I came here to discover? It is a magnificent journey. Have fun with it. Enjoy it. Let life be fulfilled as you. And so it is.